The following program is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not to be considered legal advice. Fraudsters Radio was created to expose the many scams and frauds that have so infected society today. Scammers, fraudsters, and rip-off artists abound, whether it's scamming homeowners with bogus foreclosure relief services, dating fraud, incompetent lawyers, or consumer rip-offs. It's high time the public has a voice. If you work in a profession that deals with fraud, or if you believe you were or are a victim of fraud, you now have a radio listening public that wants to hear from you. Please feel free to message us through our Fraudsters Radio Facebook page, and we may have you on the show as a guest. If you'd like to call in for today's show, the number is 646-668-8512.
And welcome to Fraudsters Radio. I'm Lori Z., nationally syndicated radio host and consumer advocate. My co-host Storm Bradford, owner of Mortgage Fraud Examiners, is out today. I do have a great guest. We're having him back for the second time, Florida attorney Robert Stines. Robert, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Always fun.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk in a few minutes about cyber fraud and cyber insurance. So I'll give the little disclaimer that you're not giving legal advice, but we are going to talk about the topic. Now, Robert, I'm a consumer credit expert. And I want to talk about something. You might find this kind of interesting because this is the number one problem that I get back from people about their credit reports. And that is that the cable companies, what happens is if you turn in your equipment and you don't actually get a receipt, within a couple of years, a charge of $200 to $300 will show up on your consumer credit report. And you may not necessarily get any bills whatsoever. I find that to be a big problem. The other issue sometimes they'll say, well, we'll mail you a shipping label and, put it on the box and just ship it back. And the same thing happens. And so, I'm sitting here thinking this is a way for these companies to make money. Part of me wants to say it's not intentional, but the other part of me says, it's almost like pulling one over. Yeah, it's like pulling one over on people. And so, what I try to tell people is if you have equipment, it's your responsibility to return it back because, yes, the company's going to charge you a fee. But if you bring it back in person yourself, you must get a receipt. Get a receipt and scan it into the computer so that in 2 years when it shows up in your credit report and they damage you, you can go to a Fair Credit Reporting Act attorney and say, hey, look, they damaged my credit because here's the receipt. The other thing is to take a photo if they send you the label and you're putting it on a box to send it back, so that way that you have proof. And I wanted to get your opinion on that because, it's something that almost every client that I deal with has the same problem, and it doesn't matter what cable company it is. So what are your thoughts?
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to go check my credit report now and see if that's on there. I'm thinking back. I'm thinking about all the times where I have changed cable providers or, I don't know, they upgrade the box or the router and they say, right, don't worry about it, you don't have to return it, or, we're going to send you a box to mail it in. Or even I've been to the retail space to return it. I have never thought about getting a receipt. That is scary because it gets into the issue of, well, did you really send back the equipment? And, it becomes a he said, she said issue. And for $300, is it worth your time to fight it? So, yeah, it does seem like the big corporation has found a way to, I don't know, squeeze out a couple $100, or it may just be inadvertent. If it's inadvertent, I mean, someone should be complaining and saying, get this right. But, wow, that's scary. And
actually, just to let you know, if a collection shows up on your credit report, I'm going to say it can be anywhere, best guesstimate would be between a 30 to 70 point drop. It can be less, it can be more, but it averages between 30 to 70. So it can destroy your credit. So if you're going to buy a house or and you need the FICO score to be a certain amount, and now all of a sudden, and the reason I share this is I recently had a client in an emergency situation who was closing on a house in a week, and called me up and said, "Oh my God, this is what happened," this exact story. And so what I ended up doing was
let me ask you,
yeah.
How do you fix that? How do you fix that?
It's really hard because if you have no proof, but what you can try to do is contact a supervisor. Getting through to a supervisor, yes, it's very difficult, and it's wastes a lot of time because you get lower tier people that don't want to pass you up. But a lot of stuff you can find on the internet if you Google the name of the company and corporate executives or president's email, you can find corporate information for most of these companies. But ultimately, what you want to do is find out, do they show a lot? They would have to log it into their computer. So if they're actually returning it, the person should be seeing that they're logging it into the computer. If they forgot a receipt and they know approximately when, that's your best chance. In my particular case, the emergency client had moved, took the old equipment with him, and then the company picked it up when they came in and gave him new equipment for his new home. And in his case, we were able to find the driver's log sheet, which was from like a year or two ago. And sure enough, the serial number matched. They admitted they made a mistake, and they took it off the report, although it took a few days. But that's how common it is. So the thing is, if you're an attorney, if you don't have proof, it's pretty hard to fight back. And the only other way I could think of is if you go in with somebody who was there the same day and you're dropping off equipment, maybe they could fill out an affidavit and say, hey, we were both there on X date at X time. But most people don't remember a year or two down the road. So
right.
I think the point is really, you got to get receipts now for everything. I get receipts because of what I do. I'm scared from some of the stories that come through from clients. I don't know if you get scared from your stories, but when you see the same one over and over, I sit here and go, wow, they just figure maybe that's another way to make money.
Yeah. And, you bring up a good point about receipts because, it used to be where you would hoard paper receipts. Nowadays, you get a receipt, you can buy a fairly inexpensive scanner and scan it into your computer, and that it stays there
right.
for however long you want. Whereas, if sometimes with your paper stuff, once you pay your taxes and then how many years afterwards you throw away receipts, this pops up and you go, oh, I don't have the receipt anymore. But if you were scanned it,
exactly.
it might be there, and it could save you in this situation. But yeah, that's great advice. I had no clue this was an issue.
Oh yeah. No, it happens. The other one that it happens with frequently are gymnasiums, like when you join a gym and, they're automatically charging you every month. Well, what happens is you might go in and cancel in person, and the person there sitting at the desk says, okay, we'll cancel it, and then they don't. And then if it's going to your credit or debit card, if you're not checking every single month, and a lot of people don't, 3-4 months down the road, you're going, wait a minute, I canceled. So same thing, you have to do people's jobs for them nowadays. If you cancel something like that, you type up something on a piece of paper that says, my account is canceled, and make them sign it, and then scan it into your computer, because the world has come down to a lot of minimum wage people, which is not fair for the amount of work they're given to do. But by the same token, if somebody tells you they're canceling service and then they're continually trying to bill, again, it's what proof do you have? So you kind of have to make your own proof.
Well, best practices. Attorneys will tell you this all the time. Get it in writing. Always get it in writing.
Right.
So, your gymnasium example. If you're going to cancel, best practices, you get something confirming that it's been canceled. Otherwise, you fall into this. But in any type of transaction, if you can get something in writing, it'll help you down the road if something pops up.
Right. So I wanted to discuss that because I knew you'd like that little story there.
Yeah.
It's so it's so common, it's unbelievable. And someone just put something up on my Facebook page the other day, about the same thing. That's how often I hear it. So, I'm a little crazy, like I said. Photos of the label so that you have a photo of the tracking number. If you go and return it in person, I've had clients tell me, hey, and they're told, they ask, is there any other amount due? There's no amount due. They're turning in the box. Well, they might get a bill, and sometimes the cable companies will run the bill past the time they moved out.
Oh, wow.
And that's another problem. So I think customer service is lacking nowadays in a lot of big companies, and it's kind of sad because it used to be so much better,
Yeah, I guess it's all about trying to cut costs where you can.
That's it. Well, we're gonna talk. Let's talk a little bit about you. So I know you were on the show a few weeks ago. Tell us about who you are, what you do.
Well, so I am a litigator, attorney that litigates. My focus is small and medium-sized businesses that have problems that can only be resolved through litigation. And as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, one of my specializations is legal malpractice. I defend attorneys. Law firms fall into the small and medium-sized business category. I also focus on cyber and internet law. So we're talking about privacy, security, e-commerce, anything that falls under e-commerce and the move to cyberspace, I get involved in. So, I mean, everyone's talking about cybersecurity. I've litigated many cases involved in cyber claims and cybersecurity.
Gotcha. Now, does that deal at all with intellectual property or no?
It does. I mean, one of the major issues, when we talk about cyber and cybersecurity, a lot of times people think about credit cards or, social security numbers. A big issue that companies face is intellectual property. I mean, we've heard news about China stealing intellectual property from American companies to compete. So that happens a lot when it comes on to cybercrime and the whole issue of what's protected. Intellectual property is a company's biggest asset. If that's stolen, then, a company can go out of business.
Right. And so, we have a list of questions we're going to go through, but you're making me think of something else too. And again, I don't know if this falls under what you do, but what about when musicians have their music stolen online, or artists, like I frequently see on Facebook, there was an article where it had 50 artists where major companies had actually stolen their artwork off the internet, and maybe modified it, maybe not, but isn't that cyber fraud?
It falls into copyright infringement, and it's so weird because what happens under cyber law is that because of the internet and the way we exchange information nowadays, some old laws have to apply to some very new issues. So when you talk about someone stealing someone's music or intellectual property, I mean that's classic copyright infringement. But how does that apply in a digital world? And I think, forget when it was, but I think in the 90s or early 2000s, the legislature realized this was an issue, and they passed something called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And that's to deal with how we exchange information when it comes on to digital copies. Because, back in the day, you had a hard copy. It's very hard to make a copy of a copy when it was analog. But now because of digital, you can make a perfect copy of someone else's art or music and just move on. So how do you protect that? So, that kind of falls in the space. And, what do you do if you see someone? A common example is when someone posts, you think about it, a picture that you've taken. You take a picture of yourself or something in your house. In theory, that has copyright protection. So when you post it up on Facebook or Instagram, that's really your copyright. And if you read the Facebook and Instagram, their user agreements, they tell you that, hey, you can't sue us for copyright infringement because you've pretty much given us license to use this. But that stuff comes up a lot. I mean, artists have a major issue right now, and it goes back to the days of Napster and Grunkster, where people would just share their information, share their intellectual property, and you couldn't stop it. And that's what harmed the music business. That's what harmed the artist business. So these types of issues pop up a lot.
Right. Well, I have more questions for you, but you know what? Let's go to a commercial break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Okay.
All right. Hang on.
Have you received a notice of foreclosure on your property? Do you suspect that you're involved in an unfair or fraudulent loan agreement? Are you looking for a way to save your home? Would you like to cut through all the misinformation and find out what really works? Would you like to learn strategies that the so-called gurus aren't aware of? If you answered yes to any of those questions, a professional team at Mortgage Fraud Examiners can assist you and your attorney with all of these things and more. Contract breaches, errors, statutory regulatory violations, fraudulent appraisals, and other fraudulent conduct cause most mortgages to be legally problematic. In fact, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation found that nearly 2,000 financial institutions they assessed received citations for significant compliance violations. They also examined appraisals and found out that of the 259 appraisals reviewed for accuracy, only 7 fully complied with professional standards. Call us at 844-920-7200. That's 844-920-7200. Mortgage Fraud Examiners, 844-920-7200.
And welcome back to Fraudsters Radio. I'm Lori Z here with attorney Robert Stines. If you have a question and you'd like to call in, the number is 646-668-8512. Now, Robert, before we go into all of your stuff, I just want to kind of finish up with what we were discussing in the last segment about the copyright laws for musicians or artists. When I read the Facebook article, and it showed where, first off, when artists usually post on Facebook, the smart ones put their copyright on there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times I was reading big companies will steal their idea, maybe put it on clothing or aprons or whatever it is, and it's the exact same thing. But the problem for the artists is that they have to now hire an attorney, right, to put an injunction against them and try to sue them, which is beyond the means of most people. And sort of a sad story, because I have a lot of musician friends who will say to me, you put something up. If somebody buys something off of, say, CD Baby or Reverb Nation, and they buy that WAV file, then they distribute it to all their friends and their family. That artist, that musician, lost out on all of the payments. Yet there seems to be no way to protect it. Like if I were to buy music, it should be made, and the computers, I can't understand why they can't make it in such a way that it can't be shared to anyone other than the direct purchaser.
It actually, there is a way, and this gets into the way that the music is coded. You see Apple, like if you're an Apple Music subscriber, if you download a song from Apple, you're only allowed to copy that music a certain amount of times. I forget what the number is. And there's an actual technology, I'm forgetting exactly what it's called, but Apple saw this issue, and Apple has, when you download music from Apple, there is some type of protection in there where you can't copy it. Now, there are other platforms out there that don't have that protection. Right? So if you put your music on SoundCloud or on these other platforms, you have to realize that there isn't any code built in there to protect your copyright, your whatever you created. There's nothing to protect it from being copied by the entire world. So you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
We're getting into a situation where you have to realize that there's technology out there to protect you, but you have to be aware of it and how to use it. And I know, like, I have friends who are artists. They have no clue that there's a way to do this. But, nowadays you have to be an artist and a technician and an accountant and everything else if you want to survive.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if you're familiar with, like, Google or TinEye, but they allow you to put your image, like of your artwork, for example. I don't think you can do this with music, but with your artwork, like I know TinEye you can do that in, and you put it in, and you can see where else on the internet, if anybody else has picked it up and published it. So that's how I think a lot of these people are finding out. But what disturbs me is when you have huge corporations stealing the art of an individual artist. It's like they give up. There's no way they can fight for it. They just don't have the money to fight for it, and they lose.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, sometimes hiring an attorney is sometimes outside their means because, the first step in if you think someone has infringed on your copyright or stolen your copyright, the first step is to send the cease and desist letter telling them to stop. And after that, you got to figure out, okay, how have I been harmed by this? Did I lose profits? Did I lose sales? That kind of stuff. And yeah, having an attorney do that can be expensive. But there are a lot of it because copying is so easy in the digital age. There are many attorneys now that specialize in this, and they specialize in sending out cease and desist letters. I mean, if you put stuff on YouTube, I mean, and you have someone's music in the background, you best be sure you will receive a cease and desist from YouTube, and it will take down your stuff. So I mean, there's a whole niche business out there in just sending out cease and desist. So, if you think someone has infringed on your copyright, then you may want to look into someone at least sending a cease and desist letter.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I used to host a variety show where I had a lot of well-known jazz musicians on the show, and of course we would play their music during the show. And I didn't look to monetize my show, but what was funny was sometimes it took a year or two, but I think ASCAP and BMI or Harry Fox, they monitor the YouTube sites, or YouTube does through them, and so I'll get picked up for copyright infringement even though the artist is the guest that's on my show. And basically they'll just say, you're not in any trouble, you don't have to do anything, but you can't monetize this. So,
right.
I had the actual guest on the show. On the other hand, though, I will tell you this. I used to run a consumer advocate show years ago where at the station they would say, what songs do you want for this? Or they would try to find popular songs to match whatever the theme was for my guests. And you're only allowed to use a limited amount of music. After that, then it becomes a problem. So, I kind of learned that the hard way back in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a copyright attorney. I mean, in terms of sending out cease and desist, I have partners that do that because, it overlaps in what I do. But, yeah, there's something called the fair use doctrine. And, I mean, if you only use a couple of seconds or you're not infringing on it to make money, there's something called the fair use doctrine. But what happens with the corporations is that you have to prove to them it's under the fair use doctrine. So they send a cease and desist. You can always say, no, this is good, or this is, this isn't a problem. But again, if you don't know how this works, you got to find an attorney, and that's expensive.
Exactly. Well, let's kind of go into your topic for the day today. Cyber fraud. Is it really a problem? I'm going to say yes, but I'm asking you, is it really a problem?
It's funny because some people say that we are just blowing this out of proportion. This is just the next fad. Everyone wants to jump on this bandwagon. But the thing is, I mean, the numbers are staggering, right? I mean, no one realizes this, but Florida is ranked number 2 when it comes on to cyber victims. That might be due to our large population. It has something to do with our elderly population. I mean, I think they said, I think it's 2016 or 2017, Florida alone lost $62 million due to fraudulent emails and cyber fraud. So it's a problem, and it's preying on our elderly. It's preying on people that aren't that savvy when it comes on to technology. And because I tell people we're in the cyber age. I mean, more and more everything is being moved to the web and cyberspace, e-commerce, e-banking, internet-based businesses. I mean, I can't tell the last time I actually walked into the branch of my bank because I do online banking and, that kind of stuff. Or, if you're on the roads, with the Florida Sun Pass, it's now electronic tolls. So someone's monitoring where you're going on a daily basis. People use PayPal. They use Amazon. So everything is online. And because all of our digital identities are online, cyber criminals see that as easy picking. And so you have huge identity theft and credit card fraud and everything else. So it's a problem, and man, it's just going to get worse over the years.
It is. I mean, I work as a credit consultant, and I'm just, all I can say is I'm scared. You're tracked. You are not just tracked by your own government. You're tracked by the criminals. I mean, I have an Alexa, and same thing. I mean, there have been stories that they can listen in for longer than you think after you've initiated what you're going to say. The Sun Pass thing, same thing. But Florida, I didn't know until I moved here. I moved here in 2005, and in 2007, someone said to me that this is called fraudulent Florida because the amount of fraud here is so much higher. Yeah, so much higher, and I find that to be true. I mean, I hear a lot of terrible stories. I have my own terrible stories. But so it's definitely a problem, and I see it's getting worse. Like you were talking about the phone calls, and then I had an elderly family member say to me, "Well, I don't understand what's the cloud. Like everybody thinks the cloud is like a cloud, and it's like no, they think of it in outer space. They're not understanding what the concepts. If people who are older, they don't understand those concepts, and they're also more likely to open up an attachments and things like that, or answer those robocalls and press in their personal information. And
it's scary.
It becomes scary.
Think about, we're going into something called the Internet of Things. And for those that don't know what that is, that's where, like, your appliances and your devices are being connected to the Internet. So you hear about smart bulbs, you hear about smart fridges and smart microwaves. My watch is connected to the Internet. All this stuff is being connected to the Internet. And all those appliances are collecting data, right?
Right.
Your light bulb can tell you how many times, when you leave the house and when you come back to the house. Your smart garage door tells you when you left and when you came back. So there's all this information floating out there, and that's just more ways for people to attack you. Because, maybe they can't get in through your computer, but they can get in through your fridge because your fridge doesn't have a password. So
I think we need dumb phones and dumb fridges and not be tracked anymore. And everything is so smart. It's so smart that people, I don't know. It just seems like it's the criminals get the information before the police do. I don't know, but I'm going to read you I pulled up some information, so I want to read you part of a list anyway of cyber fraud, which included identity theft, stolen bank account numbers, stolen online passwords. They always say make your passwords strong. Don't use your kids' names or your pets' names. Hacking, phishing, terrorist attacks, bullying. Here's copyright infringement, cyber stalking. I know people have been stalked. That's even more frightening. Theft of intellectual property, theft of personal health information, and theft of personally identifiable information. That's a tremendous amount. That's not the whole list. But are there any, what do you do? If a client comes to you, what's a typical scenario?
Well, I wanted to touch back on something that, using passwords. I think there was a report that came out last year that said they realized passwords don't work. Because these cyber criminals have access to technology where they can break a password in a day. They just have a computer, run a whole bunch of algorithms, and they can break your password. They're now saying we need to use passphrases. So, like, I love my mother on Tuesdays. Because passwords don't work. So as cyber criminals become more and more sophisticated and figure out ways to get around our cyber defenses, we as consumers that use this technology have to figure out ways to beat them. And it really becomes a race of sorts. But typically, I tell you what, there's a report that says 93% of all cyber fraud and all cyber attacks starts with an email. Everyone uses email, and it's a phishing email. Phishing email spelled PHISHING. Phishing. And the way they say it's because people are fishing for their next victim. It's everything comes through email. So phishing is a digital form of social engineering that uses authentic-looking but bogus emails to request information from users or direct them to a fake website that requests information. And I use a term there, social engineering, that we should be aware of. It's where attackers prey on people's psychology to trick them into revealing sensitive information or performing some action. So social engineering becomes so much easier because of social media. When you post your vacation on Facebook, and on LinkedIn you have your work email address, and on Facebook it has your mother's name and your pet's name. So what these fraudsters will do is that they will call you and say, hey, I'm from Chase. I see that you're on vacation in such and such. I see some suspicious activity on your account. Do you work at, just to confirm, do you work at this place, and is your email address such and such? Now, this is all information they got online, right? They didn't do anything. This is all information you posted on social media. At that point, especially when it comes on to the elderly, their guard is down. They're thinking, well, this person knows so much information about me. They must be from Chase. And then that's when they go, okay, can you please give me your password and username so I can go into your account to verify that you haven't been a victim of fraud or something. And unfortunately, by this a lot. So that's social engineering. Now, with phishing emails, they do the same thing. They send you an email that says, hey, Mr. Stines, I'm from Chase. We see that you're on vacation. We have an issue with your account. Here's your email address. Here's your mother's name. Please click on this link. And when you click on that link, bam, then you're hit by malware, spyware, ransomware, all sorts of stuff. I am now defending a series of cases where what happened is real estate transactions. So let's say there's a sale of some sort, sale of property, and the day of the closing, you're supposed to wire funds to a certain bank account. What happens is the fraudsters infiltrate the email communications, and they send the email to the client or to the title company to say, hey, please wire the funds to this bank account. It's a fraudulent bank account. And the person who sees the email, it looks authentic. The email address looks authentic. All the information looks authentic. And they wire the funds. Sometimes millions of dollars gone.
Yeah, it's scary. It recently actually happened to one of my neighbor's mothers, and we actually did a show about that. The mother lost $135,000, and it did go to Nigeria. But I want you to hold your thoughts because we're going to go to a commercial break. I got two quick things I'm going to tell you, and then we're going to continue on. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Sounds good.
Okay.
There is a very high likelihood your mortgage contains an extensive error. At Mortgage Fraud Examiners, we know just how costly a missed opportunity can be. For almost 40 years, we have consulted, retained, and referred to by attorneys, lawyers, trial practitioners throughout the nation. Put another way, we are the trusted source for litigation support. A foreclosure is basically an allegation the homeowner breached the contract by failing to make timely payments. The contract is clear. The borrower promised they would make timely payments, and if they didn't, the lender could take the property. The only way to overcome the homeowner's breach is to show the lender breached first, identify errors that would void the contract, identify regulatory violations, identify appraisal fraud and other fraudulent contact, and the only way to find these wrongs is to thoroughly examine the whole mortgage transaction. This meticulous examination of your mortgage transaction and appraisal can identify legal defects that would make your mortgage unenforceable and entitle you to compensation or even free title to your property. Call us at 844-920-7200. Mortgage Fraud Examiners, that's 844-920-7200. 844-920-7200.
And we're back on Fraudsters Radio. I'm Lori Z here with Florida attorney Robert Stines. And Robert, we're talking cyber insurance and cyber fraud. We're going to get into cyber insurance. We're going to talk about cyber fraud, but just two quick stories. I mentioned on previous shows before we had any guests on. Something happened to a family member of mine where she got an email from Amazon. It was really tricky because she did fall for it, and it said. And it listed her actual email. It said if a purchase was just made using this email, which is, of course, her email, and if you did not make a purchase, please click on this attachment to let us know. And so she clicked on the attachment. You want to talk about sneaky? So she clicked on the attachment, and then she called me too late, and she uses the same remote computer service company I do. It was expensive, but they were able to get in quickly and get rid of the person. But that's so common. My rule is if I don't know who it's coming from or it looks fishy, I don't click on it. But I can tell you, I've actually got I know someone who got hacked and is in my field of business. I received an email. It just didn't seem right. I don't know why. It looked normal, but something about it, So I called the person. They said, no, I got hacked. Thank God you didn't, open on it or click anything. The other story you briefly had mentioned PayPal. I call. Okay, so you're gonna like the story. One day I needed to call PayPal because I have 3 PayPal accounts, and I have one is newer. And so I had a question about it, and it's about the transaction. There's only one transaction. So from my phone, I talk into my phone, and I go PayPal phone number. And up pops a bunch of authentic-looking PayPal listings. They're usually right at the top. And I see a toll-free number, and they have more than one toll-free number. And so I call. Now, my trigger should have been there was no music, and there was no press this button. It was a man who answered. And this is in the morning when I'm not quite awake. And I'm thinking, my brain wasn't quite, I'm like, PayPal? That was my second mistake, saying PayPal. Yes, how can I help you? I said, well, I have a problem with one of my 3 accounts. Well, which email address? Then he started asking me for the password, and I said, wait, guys don't ask for passwords. You already can get into the account. And he goes, oh, well, don't worry. But wait, he goes, don't worry about it. I can read you off the last transaction in dollar amount, which was the only transaction in dollar. And he read it off to me without me giving him a password. Now, I was sitting at my computer, and I suddenly get an email from PayPal, real PayPal, saying, are you trying to change your password?
Wow.
Something's wrong. So I hung up on that guy. He kept calling back. I went right to my 3 PayPal accounts. I changed all the passwords. The sad part of the story is it took me over 4 hours to get a hold of PayPal. And I tried everything. I actually called all my banks to make sure that they weren't going to suck money out. So that, I mean, it's every day, and people call me stories like this every day. But talk about maybe some of the laws that protect consumers when cyber attack happens.
Right. So there is, like you said, Florida is known for having high incidence of fraud, and the Florida legislature has realized that this is becoming a major issue. So there are both criminal laws and civil laws. On the criminal side, Chapter 815, which is the Florida Computer Crimes Act, that deals with all offenses related to computers. So, of course, that's a prosecutor of the state coming down on people who are using computers to commit some type of fraudulent activity. The issue that you have on the criminal side is finding the perpetrator, right? I mean, a lot of times these people aren't even in Florida. The fraudsters, the perpetrators, the hackers, they aren't in Florida. They might be overseas. So there's a lot of frustration when it comes on to law enforcement because they can't find these people. It's the same thing with someone who's, stealing cars or robbing houses. It's like, how do you find the person? Once you find the person, how do you prove it? Can you prove that they were at a computer at a certain time actually trying to hack your computer? That's difficult. That's difficult. But there are laws out there. There's also laws regarding cyberbullying and cyber stalking. There's a case that happened a couple of years ago, some teenagers, where a young lady committed suicide. A very unfortunate story. The law enforcement got involved, and it was a case where she was being bullied on social media. There are laws that say you can't do that, and that's mainly to protect people in school, and it also applies to teachers because teachers also get bullied by parents or students. So you have laws protecting cyber stalking and cyberbullying. On the civil side, which is where a lot of consumers might rely on, there's something called the Florida Information Protection Act. And for those that are interested, that is Section 501.171. And this is the act that protects consumers when a company has been breached and their personal information is disclosed. Because what happens a lot of times is some of these, the cyber fraud that's involved, it starts off with your information being disclosed and someone actually being able to use it to commit identity theft or credit card fraud. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you, the consumer. Your information, you hand your information to a company. Let's say it's, your local retail shop. You go and you use your credit card. They say, hey, we have a program for all our usual customers. Give us your email address. Give us your username. All that information, and then that retail company's hacked. So now some fraudster has your information because your local retail shop was hacked, and they use that information to commit identity theft or credit card fraud. So Section 501.171 realizes this is an issue. And you had mentioned before theft of PII, which is personally identifiable information. And this statute defines personal information as your name in combination with your social security number or your driver's license or your health information or your email address. If a company loses that information, then they're on the hook. They have to do something. They have to let you know within 30 days that your information has been stolen. And that's
right. But what they usually do, though, unfortunately, because I know a lot of people this has happened to, is they don't offer them any money. They just offer to pay them for free credit monitoring for a year.
Yes.
That's the standard.
Yes, that's the issue. That's the issue. Okay, we lost your information. We will provide free credit monitoring for a year. Let us know if anything happens. Right? And what happens is that the Attorney General can fine these companies up to $1,000 a day for losing information, or I think the cap that a company can be fined is $500,000. But again, that doesn't go to the consumer. That's just going to the state.
Yeah.
So what does the consumer do?
That's the thing. But if I think that the credit bureaus should make security freezes mandatory and offer it for free all the time, because that's really the closest way you're going to lock down, unless of course somebody hacks a credit bureau. But yeah, and I want to tell you a quick thing that happened to me, and this goes to show you how the government here does not help. So my purse was stolen back in 2010. All my information. I'm on the dark web. I've had crazy things happen as a result of someone who had my information. Ongoing now, we're going into 9 years. Okay, so because all these companies collect information, if you've ever Googled your name, you'll see all these different companies that will have your name, your address, your phone number, your email address. Now, and so the kicker is, when I Googled my own name, because I am a registered voter in Florida, it comes up not only with my name and my address, but it also comes up with my date of birth. Now, whoever stole my information has my Social Security number. How easy do you think it is now to match it up? Yeah. So I contacted the state, and they sent me some form. And if you're a celebrity or a lawyer, a judge, or a firefighter, or you're in some profession that they deem that you're at high risk for something happening, for stalking, you can opt out. But if you're a victim of identity theft, you cannot opt out. I even tried unregistering as a voter, and my information is still there. So a couple times a year, I go into all these companies that report my information and say, I'm a victim of identity theft, please remove me. But they don't do it permanently. So the truth is, you really, online, you can track down almost anybody. Yep.
I mean, it's almost like, we need to have better cyber hygiene. All our information is just being dispersed all over the internet, and we need to figure out how to capture the information and keep it secure. And the term they use is cyber hygiene, And to your point, maybe you do want to put a freeze on your credit. So if someone wants to, I've heard this many times. Car dealerships are prone for loan fraud. Someone goes and says, I want to buy that car, and what the dealership does is they take their driver's license, they take their social security number, and then they run a credit check, and then if all is good, the person gets the car. Well, if someone is stealing your identity, they go onto that dealership and they use your driver's license, they use your social security number, they use your credit score, and 2 months afterwards, you're getting a bill saying, hey, you own a new Mercedes, and you're going, what? I didn't buy a Mercedes, Yeah. So, we have to, like you mentioned, one of the good things to do is to put a freeze on your credit. So if anyone is trying to use your credit score for something, it's locked down. You have to call the credit card company or the credit card bureau and say, hey, I'm going to buy a house or something. Please open up my credit for the next 2 days so they can do the credit check and then shut it down. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you travel also, it's another good thing. Well, when we come back from the next commercial break, let's talk more about, consumers, if they can sue a company that loses their information, and let's talk about insurance for that. So stay with us. We will be right back.
Consumers, do you have bad credit? Can't purchase a house or car? Paying too much in interest on your credit cards and loans? Scammed by credit repair companies? There is hope. You can get back on track and do it the right way. Call Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Or go to crediteducationconsultants.com now and get the help you need. Don't delay. Call today. Mortgage reps and realtor inquiries are also welcomed.
And welcome back to Fraudsters Radio. I'm Lori Z, here with attorney Robert Stines. We're here in Florida. We're talking about cyber fraud, and now we're going to talk a little bit about cyber insurance. But, you know, consumers, can they individually sue a company that loses their data, or is that usually a class action lawsuit?
Well, you can. And remember, class action lawsuits, they're voluntary. You don't have to be a part of a class. You can opt to file your own lawsuit. And you're hearing a lot about class action lawsuits. You know, Equifax being breached, that's one of the biggest class actions out there. You had Sony, Target, Marriott was breached late last year, and that's resulted in another major class action. So, yes, I mean, you can sue these companies for losing, and you can be a part of a class, or you can do it on your own. But you have to find an attorney who specializes in this side of the law to do it for you. The issues that you have with suing a company that's lost your data, in almost any case, you have to prove how have you been harmed, right? So the typical argument is my personal information is now in the hands of a hacker. It's being sold in the dark web. That will lead to identity theft. That will lead to loan fraud. It will lead to credit card fraud. But if you haven't been a victim yet, you can't. They will say, well, you haven't been harmed. So you can file a lawsuit when you've been harmed. That's a typical defense argument, is you haven't been harmed yet. The next argument is... that's dumb, though. That's like saying, let's put up a stop sign after somebody gets killed. Yes, right. So you see, that's the issue that plaintiffs' attorneys are fighting right now, saying this issue of harm, we have to change the way we think about this. The fact that the information is out there is enough. As a consumer, we trust our information to the hotels, to the rental car companies, to my healthcare provider. If they've been breached, and because of their breach, my information is now out there for someone to grab onto and that can harm me, that should be enough to sue. But the defense counsels are going, no, you can only sue when you actually have a concrete harm. The next argument that you'll see a lot of these companies make is, how do you know that it was this hack or this breach that led to your identity being out there? For example, Marriott was breached, Equifax was breached, Target was breached, all these companies are breached. How do you know which one is the cause of your information being out there? Or was it because of your own negligence? So you can sue these companies, but right now this stuff is so new. I mean, Lori, this stuff is like cutting edge. In the last 3 years, it's blown up. That they're still trying to figure out how this works, and how do you compensate someone for losing their information, and then they're being like you having to worry about identity theft for the next 9 years. How do you compensate someone for that? So
you can't. I mean, I have had crazy things happen. I notified obviously my credit card companies right away, but now they just whenever they see fraud on my account, they just mail me a new card. They just tell me, we detected fraud on your account. Here's a new card. But I actually had my auto insurance carrier call me last year saying that someone was trying to add themselves onto my auto policy by using my address. And it happened to be someone who used to rent my house years ago, but it was a child. And so it was very bizarre. I managed to find the person on Facebook because she had an unusual name. And I said, why are you trying to add yourself onto my insurance? She goes, listen, I was a little kid when I lived there. I'm 19. I don't have a car. There's no reason for me to be insured. So obviously someone used her information. She was now living in another state in like Texas. had moved from Florida. Someone was using her information trying to add themselves onto my auto policy. So then I had to contact the equivalent of the DMV here, which basically sent me a letter, that they said if you ever get pulled over and they ask you about this other person, pull this letter out of your glove compartment. So I'm sitting here going, like, the whole world has gone crazy. And, I'd love to see international laws, like where everybody had the same laws when it comes to, the cyber fraud. But I know I've seen cyber insurance. What does that really do anything?
Well, in the insurance industry, cyber is a growth market. That's how they see it. I mean, think about it. Your auto policies, your home policies, that's pretty much capped out. There's only so many new homes being built, and that's kind of trickled in. When it comes on to auto policies, other than people becoming the age where they can drive, that's your new market. In cyber, this is so huge. So we're talking about big companies that need cyber insurance, small and medium-sized businesses that need cyber insurance, and then consumers that need cyber insurance. Because, I talked about the Internet of Things and how our homes are becoming smart homes. Our home policies may have a cyber coverage on them to protect us from hacking. So this is becoming, like I said, this is so new that even insurance companies are going, how do we tap into this? There is a risk here, and we can sell policies for this risk. So yes, cyber insurance is coming down. I mean, it's right now you have big corporations and small and medium-sized companies buying cyber insurance. And there's also a lot of litigation around what's covered, what's not covered. There's also cyber insurance for consumers. And that started off with high net worth individuals. So because, high net worth individuals, they have lots more money, so they should have insurance. So it started off with just high net worth. Now you're seeing trickle down to, the regular consumer on the road who has a car, it's a smart car, it connects to the internet, they need cyber insurance as well. So yes, it's out there. It's slowly coming down the pipe. And if you have an insurance agent that understands this stuff, you can get it. But a lot of times it's so new, you don't know where to get it.
Yeah, I like I said, I wouldn't have known what it was. I just happened to come across it on some article somewhere, probably Facebook, but I was reading a little bit about it. I'm thinking, well, that's a great idea, but then how do you get companies to pay out? Because, how do you prove how it was done? It's sort of like now where we get the robocalls. I get so many a day, and what they do is they like to use the first 6 digits of my phone number. So when I see something with the first 6 digits of my phone number, I typically don't answer it because 99% it's going to be, it's going to be a robocall. The problem is, how come the phone companies can't stop them from mimicking those? How are they getting through the phone company switches to make that fake number show up? Because I guarantee you, if I call the real number back, it's an actual person who has no idea what's going on. But it's getting worse and worse. And I'm going to tell you, at least 50% or more of my phone calls weekly on my phones are either robocalls or people trying to solicit or sell me something. I'm on the do not call list, and obviously that doesn't work.
Right.
So why doesn't anybody do anything? Why don't the telephone companies do anything?
That has come up in one of my cases because it involves cyber issues, and there's a technology out there where they can spoof a company's email. And when I say spoof, they have technology where you can say, okay, when I dial this number, I want people to see the name Robert Stines, or I want people to see the name Superman. So there's technology out there that can change what you see on your phone. And it's becoming an issue when it comes on to the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, because there's a lot of class actions on that, and it has to do with cyber and voice over internet protocols where you can make phone calls now using the internet. So, how do you protect against something like that? And
that's like the magic act,
Yeah. And the thing is, you have to realize that with the cyber insurance stuff, what is happening a lot, what we didn't talk about is ransomware. This is happening a lot. It's happening in Florida where you open up your laptop and you get what's called a ransom note. And it says, your computer has been locked. You don't have access to your files. If it's your work computer, that's a big issue. And it says you need to pay us Typically, it's in Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. You need to pay us X amount of money to get your files back. And that's when cyber insurance kicks in and says, okay, you've been hacked. This is a ransom note. We'll pay this for you. It's happening a lot more. Ransomware is they say, will be the next big thing for consumers and companies. Scary.
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's going to shut a lot of people down. Yeah, big companies it'll hurt, and little people it'll hurt everybody. It's I don't know. I find the whole thing frightening. I'm sitting here. I'm not a techie by any means. I'm sitting here thinking I know there are products or ways that you can encrypt to help avoid hacking. But every time, a company comes up with something like that, the bad guys their hackers figure out the next way around it, and it just continues on and on like a never-ending cycle. And, it costs consumers a fortune in doing it. And, I get bizarre ones every day. Okay, I have Microsoft Outlook. I've paid for Microsoft Outlook. Every day I get, once a day, a bogus email from Microsoft Outlook. Now, normally you look up to see the email it comes from. However they've done it, this particular one will not let you see the email address. It looks official, and every day it comes, and every day I hit delete, delete, delete. And it becomes to a point of annoying because I actually at one point I replied back, which I don't normally do, and I went, take me off your scammer list. But they don't do that. So, before we close out, we got a couple of minutes. Any last words of advice for people?
Yeah. Think twice before you click. I mean, when you get an email that says, hey, you've been, we have suspicious activity, click here. No. Think twice. Yeah. Really examine that email address. Better yet, maybe pick up the phone and call the company and say, hey, I just got an email from you. Is this legit? I think that's the best thing you can do because all this stuff, the spyware, the malware, it comes from clicking an email. So think twice before you click. Yeah,
and I'll share you one very, very quick last story. So a couple of weeks ago, I got a phone call. I picked it up. I don't normally pick it up unless you're programmed in my phone. And it was from a woman in a call center who barely spoke any English. And so she goes, "Hi, I'm calling you from wherever, and I'm calling about your student loans." And I go, "Well, let me tell you, I record all my phone calls." Well, she didn't speak English, so I don't think she understood what I was saying. She goes, "Well, you have won the sweepstakes to have your student loans paid off. Congratulations!" Wow. And lucky. I said to her, "I don't have any student loans. Why don't you stop scamming people?" And then she hung up. So that's how bad it's getting. It's like I'm having conversations with scammers. So now I just figured don't pick up the phone. Anyway, I want to thank you again for doing a great and informative show. Why don't you give out your contact information?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been fun. This is a important topic for Florida consumers. You can reach me. My name again is Robert Stines. Last name is spelled Stines. I'm at the law firm of Freeborn and Peters. I also have a blog where I blog about these issues, cyber law, at techlawx.com. So it's tech, TECHLAW. X.com. My email address, if you want to get in touch with me, is rsteins@freeborn.com.
Great. Thanks very much, Robert. I love having you on the show. You're welcome back anytime. Come to me with great topics because I think you just are able to go with the flow and say what you mean and it works out really well. So thank you again.
Thank you. Always fun.
Oh, great. I want to thank our listeners for joining us today on Fraudsters Radio. You can join us again next Monday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time live. Remember that we do want to hear your stories, and you can contact us through the Fraudsters Radio Facebook page. All right, everybody, have a great day.
Have your house payments skyrocketed under an adjustable rate mortgage? Have you been laid off or had your hours cut? Are balloon payments coming due? You need help from mortgage fraud examiners. To stop the housing crisis, Congress and the White House are pinning their hopes on homeowners renegotiating their mortgages. The trouble is, the banks are saying no 80% of the time. Mortgage fraud examiners can help you get the leverage you need to turn things around. They estimate that up to 85% of all mortgages are legally deficient. Mortgage fraud examiners can perform a mortgage transaction analysis and an appraisal to find legal deficits in your mortgage. It's like CSI for your home loan. Banks and lenders suddenly start cooperating when faced with a lawsuit for violating lending laws or appraisal fraud. Find out how mortgage fraud examiners can help you. Visit Mortgage Fraud Examiners. Call 844-920-7200. That's 844-920-7200.